Hello and welcome to all you video game vagabonds wandering this wasteland. I'm Reynold, but you can call me Ray. For my first ever review, I chose a game that recently came out of early access. There's dinosaurs, extinct mammals, and horrible worms that erupt from the ground to devour you whole. No, this isn't a Tremors video game, it's ARK Survival Evolved. So full disclaimer before I even begin, I've played ARK a ton, but it's still not one of my favorite games. I need to say how much I want to love this game and the potential it still has. In fact, if I can find the video of me trying to stream it pathetically on day one, I'll put it here so you guys can kind of see what's going on. So ARK just left the Early Access program on August 29th. It kind of erupted from nowhere during this time and had a 2-year development period. During that period, it weathered a few controversies but still released a ton of content. I've decided to review it at the outset of Early Access just to see what the game is like. So, if you don't know, here's a quick idea of what ARK is all about. It's a survival game, which means there's limited HUD information except for your vitals: health, stamina, weight, hunger, thirst, and torpidity. I haven't played every survival game out there, so what I can say is that ARK's ability to knock out other entities is actually a really nice change. When you take certain damage, your torpor rises. The same happens when your thirst or hunger hit 0. You don't lose health, but you do pass out. For players, when it hits roughly 60 out of 200, you get knocked out, which means you can't do anything. No, seriously, you're screwed. Certain armor will help negate or reduce torpor damage, which is honestly a godsend in PvP. Oh, yeah, there's PvP, but we'll get to that later. As of this review, ARK currently has 4 official maps. 3 come with the base game, and the 4th is an expansion that you need to pay for. 2 of these maps are actually mods that were brought into the game, and both are larger than the maps Wildcard Studio made. They're the developers. I should point out that there are procedurally generated maps available, but, well, I wouldn't actually call them feature complete. Actually, after going back and starting a new procedurally generated ARK, it looks like obelisks and caves don't spawn, which means it's impossible to beat the game or go above level 100 on one of these maps. If you want something different, right now, Wildcard basically says, too bad, go play the old maps that everyone knows. To be honest, I actually really like the procedurally generated maps. I hope they get more love in the future. Now, if you're at all confused by what I'm saying, let me break it down a little bit more for you. An ARK, all capital letters apparently, is actually what another game would call a different map. On every map, except the procedurally generated ones, there are 3 floating columns called obelisks, which have to deal with ARK's lore and story. You basically go and summon bosses at the obelisks or use them to transfer between other ARKs, which are also servers, and the game. So basically, the word ARK can mean 3 different things when you're talking to a player or a developer. You do end up picking up what people are actually talking about. It just takes some getting used to. So if you're watching this and you're confused by what I mean by ARK, sorry. A big departure from standard survival games is the ability to tame creatures that you find. I mean, not all of them, but most of them. There's 120 of these different creatures, including ones that only come out in events, or the ones that are only available on specific maps. Once tamed, you can breed these creatures to get some pretty powerful allies, which is basically the only way to take on all of the bosses that you can find in the ARK. Here's where we get to my biggest complaint about ARK. It's a game about watching timers. Yeah, I left that in just to give you a taste of what's in store for you. Really, taming most things involves knocking it out, then sitting around and shoving food down its throat. That makes it like you. And no, that is not a joke. Even the easiest creatures like dodos and dilophosaurs require you to knock them out and give them food, then bam, new pet. Rexes? Oh yeah, knock them out. The scary thing is, when you're doing a passive tame, that's where you feed a creature without knocking it out, it's extremely boring, and it can be interrupted easily by a stray predator or forgetting to feed them at the right intervals. Anyways, no matter what you do, you get a digital friend for life. Until they die. By the way, don't play this game if you get attached to your virtual friends or items, because you will lose them. It's inevitable. And, I mean, you just saw me die to a poison wyvern, and I'd lost all my equipment from that. But, honestly, that's one of the things I like about this game. Nothing's permanent, and these stupid survival games have helped me realize that. That's no joke. But I know how some people can get upset when things made of pixels and code are gone forever, so I mean, just keep that in mind. There's a leveling system in ARK. It determines the recipes that you can use or make or that sort of thing. To encourage players to play together, you actually need to be in a guild, which is a tribe in this game, to have access to every single item. This is actually one of the fun parts of ARK, joining a tribe or making one and playing with other people. I mean, there's a group of guys I met on my first server that I still play with, and that's actually a really rare thing that happens for any multiplayer game that I play. This is the cause of most or probably all drama on any ARK server I played on. Because it's a survival game, it often ends up being player versus player. One tribe always wants to be the strongest so they can protect their digital goods, and whoever gets to that point becomes the alpha tribe on the server. It takes some work to get there, but if it's a lightly populated server, it only takes 5 or so players to be an alpha and shut everyone else out. You can avoid this by playing on another server, either a wildcard one or an unofficial. Side note, I mostly play unofficial servers because the few times I've tried playing official ones, the lag was horrible. Speaking as someone who's been in both alpha tribes and non-alpha tribes, there is a distinct power level difference. If you're a newer player on a server with lower experience values especially, the only thing you can do to effectively damage an alpha tribe structures are grenades, which do pitiful damage to metal and tech structures. These are the highest level things that you can make in the entire game. The problem with grenades is that they come around level 30, and by that time the alpha has already decided they want you around or not. I feel like the game could be more fun, especially if there were options for lower tech tribes to challenge the alphas. I mean, things like explosive arrows or cheap explosive paste could really help even the playing field. They do a lot less damage than the higher level C4, but it would at least give these smaller tribes a chance to fight off their attackers. Last thing to expect while playing ARK? Bugs. Not the giant ants that attack you while you're flying your birds around. I do mean the kind that come from really simple coding mistakes. A good example is 2 weeks before the official release, it wasn't possible to harvest from rocks on the Scorched Earth map. When they broke apart, they would actually just crash you to your desktop, and you would still get the resources, but your body would be left somewhere in the world wherever you were harvesting from. Even just 2 days ago, these rocks would turn into giant gray blobs after harvesting. Here are a few other bugs to expect. If you hit the ground from too high up, your body will end up under the map, rendering it unlootable. Also, the pteranodons that fly around, if you get a really high level dinosaur and hit it too hard, it will turn into a spaghetti noodle when it dies and fly away. And yes, it is pterodon, not pterodon. And honestly, this is where my review first ended. A nice pithy little comment about grammar, give the score, and then be done with it. But then I was sitting in front of another timer, and I just realized I wasn't really having that much fun. See, that's the problem with the end of ARK. It promises that you get to stomp around on these giant dinosaurs and eliminate your enemies with reckless abandon, but in the end, you just end up watching some timers and waiting for breeding imprint multipliers and all this other stuff to help you do better against the bosses. I mean, some tribes end up talking smack to each other, but it really never goes any further than that because they're both too afraid to lose their crude virtual stuff. This game goes from scratching out just some place to make a living for yourself, and then it turns into a massive, mind-numbing grind fest. I decided to take a break from staring at the most recent timer. It was a T-Rex that I was helping raise. I went out into the wild with a rifle and a shotgun when, honestly, the next revelation hit me in the face. The combat in this game is not that fun. Sure, after a while you get your own mount to ride around and fight with you, but there's a very, very distinctive weightlessness that comes with any and all weapons. I mean, for example, a saber cat ran up to me and I shot it in the face with a shotgun. It does extra damage, sure, but the saber cat does nothing. It just keeps attacking like it wasn't even shot. It's the same when you're fighting another player. Even when you bash them in the head with a club, it doesn't feel like you've done anything. It's the same when you're attacking a base. You just keep clicking until something falls over. It doesn't matter what it is. That's all the combat is in this game. And honestly, at this point, that's when I realized that's why I restart on all these different servers over and over again. The fun part of ARK is when you're just trying to survive. When you get to the point that you're just making sure everything is fed and, that you have all the weapons and items that you need, it's just boring. I mean, one of the big problems that I found is that there's not a lot of realism when it comes to these creatures. And before anyone complains that they're extinct animals, this was something that the developers did promise. For example, carnivores are always hungry. One of the first things in the patch notes was that carnivores would only be active during dawn and dusk. Basically, when real carnivores are actually active. Essentially what happens though is carnivores run around until they see something that they want to eat and they try to attack and eat it. It's like they're diabetics and they're afraid of their sugar getting too low. I mean, maybe that's the problem with ARK. It burst onto Steam Store and became famous pretty much overnight, and the small dev team made some big promises they couldn't quite keep. The focus seemed to be about adding in bigger, better creatures that became a massive time sink to tame, especially on official servers. I mean, according to its dossier, the T-Rex is supposed to be the biggest, strongest creature on the island, but apparently the Beaver and the Thylacoleo have the same base damage. And they're literally a third of the size of the T-Rex. Oh, and the dossiers. Just as a quick overview, the dossiers are things that you find out in the wild and are basically the only thing that will tell a new player, hey, this is how this one dinosaur will react to you. But part of the problem is there's a lot of false information on them. Yeah, a lot of people like to argue that it's an unreliable narrator who wrote this, but let's be serious. It sucks having to stop playing a game to look up information on some random wiki. The dossier should be 100% correct so new players can feel immersed in the game. And honestly, at this point, I should stop before I start digging up random things that I remember the devs promising that just never happened. ARK promises to be a fun game at the start, especially as you scramble to survive against raptors, saber cats, and these giant annoying ants. It just breaks that promise once you've carved out a spot to live, just because the uncaring grind simulator takes over and you get resources that you need to fight for your survival. One that, honestly, just never comes at that point. Overall, ARK Survival Evolved gets a 7 out of 10. There's room for improvement, which is scary enough since it's been nearly 2 years in early access. So there you go. All footage of this was actually shot on pancakes.tf Scorched Earth server. If you're looking for a new ARK home, check out their ARK cluster. I threw a link for ARK down in the description below, as well as the Pancakes server cluster. Feel free to shoot me a message on the Discord channel if you want to join our tribe or play together, or, I don't know, at least give me something to shoot at, or shoot at me. Whatever floats your boat. I mean, I know this is a part where people usually say like and subscribe, but, I mean, come on. I'm not gonna do that, you guys. You don't want to hear that. I think you don't want to hear that. But at least do me a favor and let me know what you thought of the video. Like I said, it's my first official review, and that doesn't mean go easy. I'd like people to tell me what they want to see. I know the audio sucks. I'm working on getting a better mic and a chair that doesn't squeak. But, what am I talking about? People on YouTube are going to rip this apart no matter what. See you next time. Wait, what's this? They announced a new DLC? Oh my god, there are going to be chest bursters. I'm going to lose so much time to this game.